it's my understanding, what they do specify is that coffee will not be allowed to be put on the market. So what the remedies are from the port, I'm not sure. If there's going to be a chance to cure, maybe to collect the necessary data, it seems rational, and provide it to the port. If there is going to be just a rejection where it gets rerouted, or as I have experienced before from shipping coffee in different countries, in some cases the coffee might just be destroyed. I mean, I think that would be a last resort, but it certainly happens for other reasons.
Right. This episode is proudly brought to you by Mapper Forward's workshop, It's Time to Become a Coffee Consultant. Learn how to diversify your revenue streams and create freedom from your day job while saying goodbye to that alarm clock forever by becoming a consultant within the coffee industry or directly to consumers who have shifted towards home brewing and home roasting. Protect your income from challenging times in the coffee value chain by taking this course today. Go to mapperforward.coffee/workshops or click the link in the show notes for details. Welcome to the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward, friends. I'm your host, Lee Safar, and this is episode 4 of a fascinating 5-part discussion with Andrew Hetzel on the details of EUDR. Now, Andrew, in this episode, we're going to talk about the predicted impact of EUDR on the coffee supply chain. What are your predictions?
Well, if my predictions were entirely accurate, I would be placing bets and I would no longer need to work in the coffee industry as a result of my profits. So, I just want to remind everyone to take what I say with a grain of salt. This is just, expectation based on my observations.
Oh, come on, bro. It is the season. We're like 10 days out from an election.
Yeah, I know. I'm not taking bets on you. The first thing I think we can agree to is there's going to be an element of uncertainty and also likely some disruption. The question becomes, how big are those disruptions and where are they most felt? And the expectation I suggest is that the disruptions are going to be greatest in smallholder producing areas that maybe are not able to comply as quickly or as fully, like with as many producers included in that compliance as you would find in some other farming areas, like state farming areas of Panama, or even the Hawaii farms if they sell to Europe, or to some of the larger estates, certainly in Brazil, who are going to be prepared to meet all of the legal and technical requirements of this rule. And unfortunately, that will lead to some sort of bifurcation of the market, where there are the producers who can and the producers who can't.
Right.
And depending on how important the EU is as a market to that region, I expect that there will be an increase in demand and price for the ones who can, and there will be a decrease in the demand and price for the ones who can't. And as we've discussed in prior sessions of this podcast, the ones who can't are probably the ones who are most at risk already. So that will put additional pressure on them to either increase their production so that they can make enough money to survive, or it may potentially force them out of coffee. Right. And in the case of an extreme disruption, there's no, question what's going to happen. We've already seen this before. So if you look at the deregulation of the International Coffee Agreement in 1989, with a sudden drop in coffee prices that impact the internal price of coffee in coffee producing nations, there's turmoil. I mean, it leads to wars, as we've seen in Rwanda and in certain tribal wars in Papua New Guinea. It leads to food insecurity, as we've seen in Latin America, certainly in Southeast Asia. And it also leads to out-migration. So if coffee farming is no longer profitable enough because of the loss of that 30% of the EU market, then a lot of people just abandon coffee. And either, that means either they're going to move to an urban area in search of other work, or they're going to shift their production to other crops, or to, just sustenance, to vegetables, their own use.
Subsistence
or
farming.
they're going to, leave Guatemala and Nicaragua and wherever else completely, and they're going to come up to the borders to the United States. I mean,
and we're seeing that happening now.
These are rational decisions. So you just need to put yourself in the mindset of the farmer. If your income drops by 30%, what do you do tomorrow?
Right. I would also like to ask you about what happens at the port, because what it sounds like is, let's say that the farmers take a risk, or the exporter takes a risk, and they export that coffee, and they're kind of not 100% on the details of the paperwork. Let's go with the assumption that the coffee is deforestation free. The paperwork is not compliant. It's great coffee. It turns up at the port.
Fantastic coffee from Ethiopia.
What happens then?
I don't know. So I'll be very.
Do they know
what the procedures are going to be? But it's my understanding, what they do specify is that coffee will not be allowed to be put on the market. So what the remedies are from the port, I'm not sure. If there's going to be a chance to cure, maybe to collect the necessary data, it seems rational, and provide it to the port. If there is going to be just a rejection where it gets rerouted, or as I have experienced before from shipping coffee in different countries, in some cases the coffee might just be destroyed. I mean, I think that would be a last resort, but it certainly happens for other reasons,
right? Because of the paperwork.
Unfortunate, potentially, yeah. I think most likely, the rational outcome. Again, this is all speculation because I haven't looked into the details, and I don't know that all the details have been published.
We're creating conspiracy theories here, bro. So let's just lean into it.
I don't want to get too far into the conspiracy theories, but I suspect that coffee would just have to be rerouted somewhere, and it would be transshipped. Then or it would get to Hamburg and be put in quarantine, and if it's found to be not compliant, then I imagine it would be transshipped to the UK.
At the cost of the
UK market there.
At the cost of the importer, right?
At the cost of the importer, correct. Yeah.
I mean, this sounds like it has a potential for some chaos.
That's definitely the second scenario, which I was going to get to. I mean, first of all, there's the impacts for the coffee farmers. For traders, there's going to be some uncertainty. Is the shipment going to be allowed in? I mean, we think we know paperwork that's necessary. How long are the inspections going to take? We don't know. Is that going to be like in the case of the U.S. with the FDA? Sometimes if you're importing, you could be flagged for inspection. It could take a while. It could cost some money for that inspection. And then, comes that inspection going to be, and what it takes to either resolve any problems or to find an alternative source. So yeah, there's that's again part of that risk premium. We don't know exactly what will happen, which makes you think that there will be some nations or some regions certainly that are favored in EU trading because they're easier. That's going to make business cheaper, right? So you're going to favor the estate that has all their paperwork and isn't going to be a problem once it gets to customs, and will sail right through because it doesn't disrupt your supply chain. It doesn't delay, it doesn't incur additional costs. There's no other potential it's going to be bounced. So yeah, it's just another hurdle that needs to be jumped to be able to get into the country. And don't forget that we're talking about green coffee here.
Yeah.
This also applies to roasting.
Roasted. That was going to be my next question.
If you're a coffee roaster in the US, or if you're a coffee roaster in the UK that is shipping coffee into Europe, the importer has that same responsibility as the green trader who is bringing coffee directly from origin. So you need to be able to produce the traceability information and to hold the audit records, all that other kind of stuff, for fear that you might be flagged as non-compliant.
And does this apply B2B as well as B2C?
I assume not. I think it's only B2B because of the definition of an operator and a trader.
Okay.
But that's a very good question. I actually had that same thought not that long ago. It's like, well, what if I buy coffee when I'm traveling abroad and then just carry it in for personal use? I think I think the question there is, it's the company or the operator that is putting the goods for sale on the European market. So if a consumer is carrying in packs of coffee they're going to sell in a market, they might be culpable, but if it's only for their own personal use, probably not.
So here's a scenario. You're a business in an EU country.
Yes.
You don't want the hassle of importing green coffee.
Right.
You decide to buy roasted coffee across the border.
Yeah.
And let somebody else deal with the problem of importing green coffee, and you're now going to buy roasted coffee from that country.
Yeah.
It sounds far-fetched, but a lot of things are going to reorganize themselves through this process.
Yeah. I mean, in that case, the cafe is responsible, right? If you're like a multi-roaster cafe,
that's the question. I don't. Are they?
Yeah, they are, because they're making the good available for sale in the form of beverage. So it's all derivative goods of that particular commodity. So it's green coffee, therefore roasted coffee, therefore coffee beverage. So if, let's say, for example, you're a multi-roaster in Berlin that's sourcing coffee from the US, sourcing coffee from Southeast Asia somewhere, buying something from Square Mile in London, you need to make sure that all of that documentation is available at the time you import your receipt.
Wow. Do the EU have enough employees to compliance this shit?
Well,
this is complicated, Andrew.
It's very complicated.
All the scenarios you and I could come up with over the next 20 minutes.
We're only talking about coffee, right?
Yeah.
I mean, don't forget, these same inspectors are responsible for looking at not only like a cow, but like the nibs and the roasted product and cocoa butter and chocolate bars and all this other kind of stuff. The same rules apply to all of those things. Yeah, I mean, it's huge.
How big is the army that the EU is going to be employing to monitor this stuff? Well,
that's the question, that I think you asked earlier this session, the last one. It's like, how are these going to be enforced?
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be a lot of reliance on the transmission of electronic data. And there will be selective audits in the field of, how reliable this data actually is. And are they going to be able to determine if, a single coffee farmer in Ecuador actually has the title to their, half-hectare plot of land or not? I'm not sure they're going to inspect it to that sort of granular detail. I mean, in terms of effectiveness, I would think they would focus on the large traders that are, potentially that have some sort of shady business practices and be able to prove otherwise. So I'm not sure it's going to target the little guys so much, so long as they have their data in order.
Wow. Some of the ripple effects, if we're talking about the impact that this could have on the coffee supply chain, what do you see as some of the ripple effects that are perhaps secondary or tertiary as a result of EUDR? Let's say pricing.
Short term, we've already seen some of that.
Oh,
Yeah, we've
really?
already seen some of that with the expectation that EUDR was going to be put in place January 1. We already saw that Ethiopian producers were unable to book a lot of their
Oh,
traditional annual trade with Europe. So, there were excess stocks that were available to be shipped elsewhere. That was already starting to create concerns. We will see that in the short term. Like I said, the can and the can nots, the cans are probably going to be booking their products further out for deliveries into Europe with the expectation that they're less likely to see a problem. And there will be other coffees on the market. They're going to have to look for a different home. So you are a smallholder coffee producing country that is not necessarily going to be compliant or reliably compliant on day one. I would think your coffees are probably, you're going to be looking at developing more trade in the United States, in Japan, in
right. China.
the Middle East, and
Yeah.
other, exactly, China as well, in other areas of the world that are less concerned about those regulations, at least in
For
the
the
short
moment.
term.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the moment. I think over time, what I think is going to happen is that, as we discussed previously, there's just going to be less variety available in Europe specifically because of the cost of compliance, which will further skew the competitiveness of smallholders relative to the large and efficient operators. And that's just how it works. I mean, it's the same thing in U.S. agriculture. When you have policies that favor large businesses, then large businesses succeed, and it squeezes the small farmers out of farming. And that is exactly what the EU is doing by putting policies in place that are best navigated by the most sophisticated operators.
What's to stop coffee producers? Let's say Farm A has deforestation on it, or let's say it doesn't. They just can't figure out the geotagging side of things to get the paperwork together. That's what's happening on Farm A. On Farm B, they're good to go. What's to stop them from saying to Farm A, bring us your cherries, and we're talking about this divide that you're talking about. Bring us your cherries, we'll process them over here, and we'll sell them as European coffee. What's to stop that?
Right. The enforcement of national law.
I'm not sure that they care about that in some of these countries, bro.
There really isn't it. No, and I mean, to answer your question, I would expect that some of that will happen. The question is, is there enough of a margin to make that worthwhile? So we're talking about, in commodity trading terms, we're talking about what's called delivery risk, right? So does it make sense for me to take my coffee from Timor-Leste and drive it over the border into Indonesia and sell it as Indonesian coffee because I know an Indonesian producer there who's compliant with the EUDR? I don't know. I'd have to look at everyone will make a rational decision based on the economics of the situation and what the other risks are along the way of being caught, and who you have to pay off to get the stuff over the border without paperwork. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of those sorts of things, and they're happening already today. I mean, there's a whole lot of coffee cherries that make their way over to Kona.
Yeah, we've seen that firsthand. So one other thing, finally, in this episode that I want to ask you about, you may not have thought about this, totally fine. But when we do start to look at the predicted impacts, how do you see this playing out in the final cup or the final bag of roasted coffee in Europe?
I think, again, not to sound like a broken record, I think there's going to be a lack of variety available.
What about pricing?
You're going to see pricing will probably increase just because of the lack of competition, because there'll be less competitors who are competing in that market, right? In terms of suppliers.
Well,
so as a result,
right.
there's going to be, not just the additional cost of compliance, but there's going to be fewer that are able to comply. So those are potentially going to be able to demand a premium for the products they're selling. If I'm a superstar estate in Brazil, and I'm one of the few that can actually ship products to your country, well, I'm going to charge you more. There's a premium. There's some sort of value to that ability. So you're going to see, fewer products available. They're going to be more expensive, but in theory, they are ones that comply and therefore are less culpable for deforestation. And that's something, assuming the consumers were in support of this legislation, they should be prepared and willing to pay for.
Well, and I can see one of the other impacts is that businesses that are buying roasted coffee and selling roasted coffee, we may see a reduction in those businesses because of challenges with the supply chain. It may mean that there are less roasteries and less cafes.
Yeah, definitely. If you're roasting coffee abroad and bringing it into the EU, I'd be very concerned, because there's a lot of risk there of not having that connection to your source.
Well, even those that are roasting inside the EU, if there's not enough coffee for all of the roasters that are there, they're going to go out of business. There could be some competition.
Yeah.
Well, it'll be survival of the fittest, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Wow. What could go wrong?
Unfortunately. Yeah, that's a problem. Whenever you enact a piece of legislation that is this big, this
sweeping,
inclusive, sweeping, it's going to have, even a small little hiccup on a large scale is going to be problematic to a large number of businesses and a large number of consumers. So we have yet to see what that's going to be, because there was no prototype, there was no test case that was run in advance to see what the impacts were. There was no study that was performed to say, okay, let's apply these rules to producers in a small area with their cooperation and study what the impacts are.
Right.
And we'll have a fund available that makes up for any shortfall. Hopefully they'll do better than just as a result of complying. But it was not done. So really, these are unknowns. We don't know exactly what's going to happen. We can only predict based on what's happened before and what sort of the economic models will tell us. And we'll have to wait and see now until January 2025 what the outcomes are, which I think the 1-year delay, which was just announced 2 weeks ago, is a good thing, because
is it confirmed yet, Andrew?
More time. I'm sorry?
Is it confirmed yet? I know it was
I believe it was
suggested.
confirmed like 2 days ago.
Okay.
It was suggested. I believe it was voted 2 days ago. That's my understanding. I could be wrong about that, but I think it is confirmed now.
Okay.
And that extra time is absolutely needed for those who can possibly comply to be able to implement some of these systems and to work out some of the legal issues and bugs. And I suspect that the EU also appreciates that time, so their inspectors can get ready to crawl over all those shipments.
They've been their small army.
They come in. Yeah.
Okay, we have one episode to go.
They're going to need they're going to need more immigration to fill all those jobs.
Oh, they're looking at Brexit now, saying so many things.
Yeah. Okay. Maybe that wasn't a bad idea.
Maybe. Okay, one final episode in this series, folks, and in that we're going to talk about what we can do to prepare for EUDR. So join us in the final episode. Peace, love, and peanut butter. Have an amazing rest of your day. I really hope you enjoyed this episode, friends. Please don't forget to show us some love by subscribing, liking, commenting, and most of all, sharing this podcast with your friends. Check the show notes for links, including our sponsors and our Patreon. And stay tuned for more great conversations on the Daily Coffee Pro by Map It Forward.